What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Slow down. And the context there, and many of your listeners will relate, is I'm very go, go, go. I am very much a human doing, not a human being. And as I also imagine many of your listeners can relate to, it's one of my superpowers, that tenacity, that ambitious work ethic that allows me to have some of the success and the opportunities I've had. Yet there's been plenty of moments in my life where it's veered on the verge of counterproductive, destructive at times, and slowing down has really allowed me to connect with my highest self, best self, intuition, subconscious, whatever you want to label it as, to get the clarity, the honesty, the authenticity I needed to make the well-informed decision.
Love that. And what's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
So hear me out on this one. Just do it. I love Nike. I'm a Nike guy. But in this realm that I coach and work in, the mindset space, I really operate with this premise. I don't help people overcome a lack of knowledge problem. We can go to Google and fill those knowledge gaps in a matter of milliseconds. Most people I work with, and you're shaking your head, we know what to do to achieve our goals. If we don't, we can hire a technical coach. We can go to Google. The problem we run into is a mindset problem, an emotional block, if you will, that prevents us from executing on the knowledge we have. So sometimes, and more often than not, just do it doesn't cut it. If I could just do it, I would do it. Something in the past has kept me stuck. Your listeners probably agree. They know what to do to achieve their goals, to scale their impact and their income, but yet something has bogged them down, preventing them from taking action.
Couldn't agree more. Today, our guest is Paul Salter. Paul Salter is a high performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach who leverages hypnosis and powerful subconscious reprogramming techniques to help his clients get unstuck, also get out of their own way and unlock their potential. He has over 16 years of coaching experience and has personally coached more than 3,000 high performers across all industries. Paul's clientele include business owners and CEOs, high-level execs, serial entrepreneurs, amateur and professional golfers, professional poker players, and professional traders. Noteworthy experiences on his journey include working as a high-performance sports dietitian at IMG Academy, serving as the lead nutrition writer and editor at bodybuilding.com, and teaching advanced human performance at Northern Arizona University. He also played poker professionally for 2 years. I want everybody to check out Paul at his website, thegolfhypnotherapist.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes, thegolfhypnotherapist.com. Even if you don't play golf, check that out because he can help you in all areas of your work life and home work and home life. Paul, welcome to the show.
DJ, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the energetic introduction. I appreciate that.
I am such a fan of this whole area of discovery, which is mindset, because what you said earlier is, I think, so true. Is we don't have a knowledge problem or a knowledge gap. We have a mindset problem or a mindset gap, and we know what to do. I mean, it took me, dozens of years before I finally figured out how to get myself to the gym. And I knew that I should have been doing it all that time. And the only thing that worked for me was hiring a trainer. And I wish that weren't the only way because it's certainly the most expensive way. But the results are in and it works for me. And I've never missed a session since. And discipline for me is Gallup does this thing called Gallup, the polling service Gallup. Mm-hmm. They have this thing called Strength Finder. It's called Clifton Strength Finder. It's really cool, and it lists all of your strengths and weaknesses, and there are 34 of them, and 33rd out of 34 is discipline for me. So nobody understands how to not do something regularly than me. Yet, so I have to have systems because I just can't normally do things, which means I have to have the right mindset in order for me to accomplish things, because discipline, it just ain't my thing. So I have to rely upon mindset. And so I'm so excited to talk to you today and to share with our listeners why mindset is so important. And really, again, I interview the top performers in real estate, and for years and years, hundreds and hundreds of episodes. Almost all of them say I'm not smarter than the next agent. I don't really, maybe I have a little bit more knowledge about my particular specialty than the average agent, sure, but it's really more about how I see myself as an agent that allows me
Yes.
to succeed. So let's talk about that. First, let's get into your history. Tell me about you.
Yeah, so my long story made as short as I can. Like you alluded to, I've been coaching for 16 years. My background's as a high performance dietitian. Right out of the gate, I was fortunate enough to start working with collegiate, professional, and Olympic athletes, helping them to maximize performance, body composition, and recovery. Now, two unique experiences occurred during this chapter of my life. First and foremost, I made the bold decision to talk very little about food and nutrition, which, as a dietitian, kind of sounds like I didn't do my job very well. However, what I mean by that is I operated with the bold assumption those I worked with knew how to make nutritious food choices. There was something between their ears, in their heart, that was truly holding them back from the ruthless consistency they needed to achieve their goals. Second, imagine just being in the room with Olympic athletes, professional athletes, the way they carry themselves, the way they speak to and about themselves. It's just different. And what always fascinated me from a young age as a multi-sport athlete in high school was why was someone like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Roger Federer, Tiger Woods, why were they leaps and bounds better than their peers and competitors despite more or less putting in the same number of hours to perfect their craft? Clearly, it wasn't a lack of knowledge or a practice regimen or a magic fix. It was what was going on between their ears. So that was the foundation of my approach. I was fascinated with performance psychology, the why behind behavior change. And I also had a passion for the game of poker that I repressed for far too long. And about 10 years into my coaching career, I finally decided it's now or never. I got my coaching program and approach set up to be very systematized, just like you alluded to maximize my energy, to free myself up. And I went all in on poker. And I, to this day, will firmly argue and believe I outstudied and I outworked everybody. I had no money to show for it. I felt like I was lighting money on fire and I was baffled. I was angry, frustrated, every verb and negative emotion in between. But I finally had the humility to ask for help. So I hired a mindset coach. She happened to be a hypnotherapist. And in a very quick time, I made a lot of money. I started playing for significantly higher stakes, but far more valuable was the impact she had on my personal life. So much so, I walked away from poker. I walked away from nutrition altogether. I doubled down on mindset coaching, shifted who I began working with, attained my credential as a hypnotherapist, and the rest has fallen into place and just evolved and gotten better with each passing day.
What a great story, and I love that. It is. It's funny, by the way. I was just out with some friends on a trip to Salt Lake City, and we I was not familiar with how to play Texas Hold'em poker,
Okay.
which I'm assuming is probably the poker of choice that you were into.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, is it a fast game! I had no idea just how fast, and that is a true game of skill right there, and strategy and. Oh, I can't even imagine how challenging it is to be a professional poker player with all the stress involved. And then on top of that, you can, bluff and you can do other things. But boy, it was so far beyond what I was able to do. But this idea of mindset, again, comes up time and time again for me, for you, and for all of us, I think. And it's something that is so easy for me to think if I just had more information. I tend to think information is the answer, right? I tend to think if I just had if I just read the next self-improvement tip, or if I'm just missing one next thing, or getting a piece of technology, and the reality of it is it's probably not that for me. It's just getting to do the hard work. And sometimes my mindset tells me, no, just look for the next thing instead of doing the next thing. So I'm curious to sort of get your take on what trips us up.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think we're conditioned to believe knowledge is power. There's that infamous quote. I don't know if it was Tony Robbins or somebody, but then all during grade school and high school, it's like study this, rote memory, learn this, absorb this, regurgitate this. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is more, 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 more. But the truth is, knowledge is pretty invaluable, if not worthless, if it's not paired with action. We need to act upon the knowledge we have to begin integrating into our lives, which allows us to then take forward motion and build momentum towards becoming the next version of ourselves. And the reason that the action piece of the puzzle is so difficult is, first and foremost, it requires a lot of energy. And as human beings, as emotional beings, we waste and expend a lot of unnecessary energy holding on and keeping emotions repressed, holding on to shame, anger, guilt, sadness, whatever it may be. And then second, there's the big elephant in the room, which is fear. It's scary to take action. What
Yep.
if I fail? What if I'm judged? Or what if I succeed? Holy crap, that's even scarier for most people, believe it or
Yep.
not.
Yeah, the fear of success is a real thing. And so what we do is we get in our own way and we don't do the thing, the chop wood, carry water, the push up we need to do, the call we need to make, the prospecting. It's the we just don't do the thing that we want to do, and we can't seem to stop ourselves from not doing it. And
Yeah.
that's where you come in. And so, as realtors right now in particular, challenging time. We have
Mm-hmm.
high interest rates. We have low inventory, and it's just tougher. It's tougher to be a realtor these days. So you got to work a little harder, which means you got to do more, which means you got to get yourself to do more, which means you got to have the right mindset to get yourself to do more. So let's talk about how one how one might want to set themselves up for success. What are some of the ways in which you can start priming yourself to actually follow through?
Yeah, so there's a quote that was shared with me, or I read it a few years ago, that really changed the trajectory of not only my life, but how I began updating my coaching processes. And that quote is, the voice of your subconscious mind is silence. And I think that's
Yeah.
really valuable because when we think about it, we're conditioned to go and do. And real estate agents in particular, it's hustle, 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 nonstop calls at 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., if not 10 p.m., on the weekends, on the holidays. We never just sit, we don't be. So what happens is we use our work ethic. Again, we wear it like a badge of honor, but technically it's a way to escape. It's a way to avoid uncomfortable emotions. And when we sit and unintentionally or intentionally, we find those pockets of silence, stillness, and solitude, more often than not, we can be confronted with some pretty uncomfortable truths. And that can spark anger, fear, frustration, shame, guilt, regret. And who wants to sit with those? Those suck. They're uncomfortable. So we throw ourselves back into work.
Yep.
So, really, it's about developing a silence and stillness practice. You might call it meditation, it might be journaling, it might be guided hypnosis, it might be breath work, it might literally just be setting your timer for 5 minutes and sitting with yourself. But that practice begins to get you experiencing a little bit more comfortability being with nothingness and allowing some of the interference that you experience to fade in the background, and you can begin to confront some of the beliefs, the patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that you're currently experiencing, and begin to make an informed decision about which ones it's time to let go of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I want to share a quote, one of my favorite quotes from mathematician Blaise Pascal. This is a great one. If you, for all of us that are listening, all of man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room alone.
Mm.
Isn't that great?
Spot on. What a great share.
Yeah, so thank you. And I think you're right. It's the silence between the notes that make the music, right? It's this idea of getting quiet so that we can confront our inner turmoil, our stuff, the stuff that we must get out of the way so that we can be a more effective human. But that requires us to, as you said, slow down, have a practice, a discipline of sorts, and the ability to turn off our phones, put them somewhere else,
Yeah.
and not be a consumer as much of content, of stimulus,
Yeah.
stimuli, and to just be and watch what sort of bubbles up.
Well said. That's exactly the phrase I would have used because we're professional escape artists, especially
Yeah.
this day and age with social media technology. What it is, it's easy to get home from a day of work and to throw on Netflix or to open up a bottle of wine. There are no shortage of opportunities to escape, to numb, to avoid. And it feels good in the moment. Maybe after a long time, it's not even you experiencing that in the real time. It's you remembering how good it used to feel to drink wine or binge Netflix. You're just so dull and numb in that moment. But in the long term, it's incredibly costly, destructive, holding you back in so many ways. And it's as if you're just continuing to dig a deeper and deeper hole.
And so if we find ourselves doom scrolling
Mm-hmm.
and looking at content instead of doing our work, instead of working on our business, instead of spending time with our families, instead of working out,
Yeah.
and it's an addiction. We all have it to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
First step is acknowledging it, saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is a really, really powerful drug that I'm holding in my hand, and I don't really stand much of a chance while I'm on it because
Yeah.
it's just built to keep me on it, and it's really well engineered to keep me on it. And you can do really great things with it, and you can also get lost. And so." I think you're right. This idea of returning to baseline, returning to center, returning to and checking in with oneself. What's going on
Yeah.
inside of me? What am I
Yeah.
dealing with? Is so important because it's going to come out anyway, right? It's going to leak out, and you might as well intentionally have it come out when you want it to, versus
Yeah.
when you're all sitting around the Thanksgiving table realizing, oh my gosh, I have so many issues with these people.
Yeah.
You could actually, deal with it ahead of time, which would be great. But let's talk about specifically hypnosis because I know I've been a huge fan of hypnosis for
Yeah.
ever since I was in college, and I saw a stage show where somebody
Okay.
barked like a dog and clucked like a chicken, and they really did. And then
Mm-hmm.
the hypnotist did something very interesting at the end. Aside from all of the sort of silliness, he took one of the guys in my dorm,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, I'm going to make it so that you feel really good every time somebody said a particular word. And the
Okay.
whole way home, we were walking, and one of us would throw out that word once in a while, and he would light up. And I went, boy, that is cool. And I thought, imagine, and it lasted for a day or so, and then I don't think
Yeah.
it continued to go. But I could see a physiological response in him while by saying this word, he would actually light up. There was definitely some good neurotransmitters firing. He was getting some dopamine or something, and
Yeah.
it was palpable. You could see it, and I went,
Mm.
"That's really cool." And I thought, "Gosh, imagine if I felt good, that good, in a moment of stress or in a moment of time when I need to calm down and relax." Because
Yeah.
like you've worked with a lot of athletes. I got into meditation only because I heard, and I'm not a basketball fan really, but I heard LeBron James
Mm.
talking about meditation, and it was very
Yeah.
interesting. And I don't know why this never occurred to me. This will be so obvious to our listeners and you, Paul, but certainly wasn't to me. And he said the reason why I meditate is he said when I'm on the court, I cannot get upset. If I get angry, I am going to play worse than I would if I'm not angry. He's like, the
Yeah.
data is really clear. Like if I get angry, I miss shots, I foul more, I'm just a poorer player. So it does
Mhm.
not behoove me to get upset, which means I have to be in total control. So if somebody throws an elbow into my side or pushes me or fouls me or says something nasty to me, I literally cannot react to it in a negative way because if I do, that person now has control over me for a moment and
Mhm.
my mindset is shifted. I don't have control, and now I'm playing. I'm a worse player for my team. And I was like,
Yeah.
that is so obvious. So again, this is all stuff that you teach people how to do. Is how to sort of grab that that ability to really regulate oneself
Yeah.
and put yourself in the best possible state so that you can get out and do your work.
So you said an interesting word when you were talking about LeBron James. You said when he would be, if someone throws an elbow into his side, he reacts. And
Yeah.
the reason I pick out that word is because no one would fault him for that reaction.
No.
Now, here's the opportunity that exists for all of us. And this is the foundation of the work I do is I help my clients shift from a state of unconscious reaction to conscious response. Now, aside from the subtle word differences, the only true difference between the two states is a second, a pause, a
Yeah.
millisecond. But it's that millisecond of opportunity that empowers you with a sense of choice. You can react by throwing back an elbow in LeBron's case, or you can choose to respond with a deep breath, which in essence turns down the volume of your emotional brain that was just prior turned up to max because that elbow hurt like hell. And then you can choose how to move forward. It's all about empowerment and choice and getting to a place of response rather than reaction. We think about navigating the real estate landscape, navigating building their business. There are no shortage of triggers in everyday life that are just waiting to be tripped up so you have a strong emotional reaction. It's not a matter of if you are going to be triggered, it's a matter of when. So a stillness practice, a meditation practice gives you the toolkit to be able to collect yourself, pause, and then choose how to respond in a more effective and productive manner.
What you're really talking about is freedom, I think. And
Yeah.
it's freedom because we're talking about choice. And we now, okay, so we get a nasty email or we get a phone call from a client that is firing us, or maybe we lost a deal, and that is devastating. And there is a natural reaction to that, and maybe it's anger, sadness, fear. And then we have to process that quickly, because then we have to also realize the next moment is a choice as well. So
Yeah.
now I've had this event happen to me. I've had good things happen to me, bad things happen to me. It's just all the human experience. All
Mm-hmm.
these things are going to happen, like Paul, just like you said, and we need to be able to choose how we process them and how we engage with that stuff, because
Yeah.
that allows us to then choose how to move forward. So what you're really talking about is intentionality, I think. It's like,
Yes.
how do we make decisions for our lives?
Yeah, well said. And before intention, just like you alluded to in the beginning of our conversation, there's a level of awareness that needs to be there because these reactions, they're unconscious. They happen below conscious awareness. We typically don't become aware of them until after the fact when we're like, oh, crap, I regret how I talked to so and so or how I behaved in that situation. But what's really remarkable, and I think what really needs to be heard, is the set of reactions that we are all pre programmed with, the patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, behaving, they're all learned, which means they can be unlearned. And when you adopt that open mindset and you adopt looking inward through a lens of non judgmental curiosity, you can begin to find the origin of when you learn to think, feel, believe in a certain way, and then begin dismantling that pattern, that program, so you can create one that aligns with the next best version of yourself.
I love that. Let's talk about some of the destructive programming that we have within us, and that,
Yeah.
as to your point, we can reprogram.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get the basic fundamentals of all destructive mindset programs. Every single one of them has the same constituent parts. There's a trigger, which sets off a pre-programmed emotional reaction. That emotion then permeates into the words we use to talk about and to ourselves. Our mental inner chatter is nothing more than thoughts. The more time, energy, and attention we give our thoughts, they become beliefs. Beliefs are nothing more than lenses through which we view the world and filter our decisions and our actions. So, this negative emotional energy, when we are triggered, influences our talk, our thoughts, our beliefs, and therefore our behaviors, and eventually our results and our identity. So that's the working model of what a destructive mindset program is. Now, every single one of us probably has dozens, if not more, different one of these patterns. They might be perfectionism. They might be procrastination. They might be incredible angry outbursts that feel uncontrollable and are incredibly destructive, both on a relationship level, but then on a professional level as well. There are patterns and programs that it's not safe to play big. It's not safe to have all eyes, attention, or the spotlight on me. So when these triggering situations arise, we might start to play small. We might lower our ambition. We might sink back down to a collection of people who are average, which is not where we want to be, but it doesn't feel safe to stand out. And all of these, again, are learned and they're designed to keep you safe. And when you're willing to look inward and start uncovering when, why, and how you learn this program, that's when the magic happens. The real growth moment begins to occur because you can dismantle at each one of those constituent elements.
Wow. So how do we begin to dismantle?
Yeah. So let me give you a story. One of my clients, and I love this story. He was a professional poker player, but the story is so palpable. So he grew up with a single mother raising him. His dad was a drunk. His words, not mine. I would agree, though, after learning more about it. And his dad was absent for most of his life. And around the age of 8 years old, his dad suddenly started coming around again. And dad would pick him up from school, and dad taught him how to play the game of chess. And my client, so excited. Dad's back in town. Dad's hanging out with me. Dad's playing games with me. This is the best. Well, within a couple of weeks, this 8-year-old boy starts beating his dad in chess. And suddenly, he's beating his dad all of the time to the point dad stops coming around. And in fact, he didn't see dad for 7 years after that. So this boy, and it's going to sound silly and irrational to us as adults, but this boy at this time developed a belief it's not safe to win.
Right.
It's not safe to have success. The last time I won and had success, dad left. Dad is everything to a little boy.
Yeah.
So we fast forward decades later, and we saw this pattern with him. If you're unfamiliar with poker, tournament poker, the vast majority of the money is at the top 10 to top 5%. So if there's 1,000 people in a tournament, you're not making any serious money to the top 20, the top 10. He would notice a strong pattern every time he got close to making the money or making the big money, the 6 and 7 figure life-changing money. He would blow up and behave in such an irrational way that was completely incongruent with his skill set and his experience. Once we were able to uncover the origin, why this happened, do the necessary healing work to help Barry let go of that, to feel a sense of safety, feeling empowered, confident, and strong, winning, having the spotlight on him, he went on a tear, making money, winning tournaments because it freed him up. It created a metaphorical sense of safety in his subconscious mind that it's okay to win, to have success. There's not a huge consequence like losing your relationship with your dad on the other side.
Wow, what a powerful story. And, I totally, I hope everyone followed that. Just made all the sense in the world. A young boy wants his father's approval, wants his father's love and attention, and by becoming more proficient at something, actually loses his father in the process. So he learns, of course, success equals death in a way. Success equals loss. Success equals I lose. So therefore, the subconscious wants to protect oneself from that kind of pain. So once we start getting more proficient at something, the coolers come on, the AC comes on to cool it down. Let's slow it down. We can't have too much success, because if we do, that means people are going to leave or we're going to be unhappy. So this is why the unexamined life is not worth living or that expression, the unexamined life. The examined life is worth living, because we all have these kind of things. They're beneath the surface often. They're not super obvious to us. We all have behaviors that we go, I wish I wouldn't do that, but I find myself doing X. Or I wish that I believed X about myself, yet I believe Y instead. Because the reality of it is, you're right, Paul, it is mindset. It is not a mystery about how to be a successful realtor. There's thousands of books that you could pick any of them and do any of the practices in there, and you could listen to one of my episodes from one of the top agents that I've interviewed over the last 7 years. They all basically say not the same thing, but a very similar path of action. And yet a lot of agents struggle to do that path of action. So so we know mindset's important. We know getting quiet. We know getting the roadblocks we have out of the way. Can we do that ourselves? Can we get the roadblocks out of our own way? I am going to argue that we cannot. I just don't think it's possible, because if it were, I would have removed mine a long time ago. And sadly, I just couldn't. I had to get help for mine.
Yeah, it's a great question. And to be candid, I'm a big believer, and this is obviously biased, but like asking for help accelerates results, period.
Yeah.
Can you get out of your own way to an extent? Yes. Do you need to have the utmost discipline, consistency, and a hell of a lot of patience? Also, yes. However, getting another brain, set of ears, set of eyes to examine what you can see and point out what you cannot see proves to be pivotal and not only expanding your awareness as to when, how, and why you're holding yourself back, but then it can create an opportunity where you can dump gasoline on the fire of transformation to level up and become that next best version of yourself.
Well, gosh, so perfectly said. So talk to us about how you would work with a realtor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually have quite a significant experience working with a handful of realtors. I work with a small Tampa real estate group, which I'm going to introduce you to the guy after this. He'll be a great guest for you. And I separate even the identity of a realtor. You're at the core, you're a high performer, you're an entrepreneur and or business owner. So I get really, really simple here, because at the end of the day, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a professional poker player, whether you're the owner of a spa and salon, there are similarities and themes that exist for you as an individual trying to step outside of your comfort zone, and then you as an individual trying to expand, whether it's your income, your network, or your impact. So first and foremost, what I find most prevalent and what needs to be addressed is the level of which you believe you are deserving, worthy, and capable of success. Again, a belief is nothing more than a lens, a filter through which you see the world, and a lens and filter through which you make decisions and take actions. If you don't believe you're worthy of becoming a 8-figure realtor, guess what? You're absolutely not. And I don't care how many affirmations you shout into your mirror every morning. If you
Yeah.
don't subconsciously, deep in your soul, believe it, it's not going to happen. And that is always the place we need to begin, is what do you deep down honestly believe you are worthy, deserving, and capable of? And what's really interesting is by the age of 7, researchers estimate 95% of our belief system is formed. So when I share that, what I mean is you're not even
Mom and dad.
responsible for your beliefs. Yeah, thanks, mom and dad, right? So and on one angle, it's like, well, I can be mad and frustrated, like, grr, these aren't my beliefs, these are mom and dad's. But you're also the only one who can do something about it. So this goes back into the stillness, the silence, examining, like starting to challenge your beliefs. Where did I learn that? Is that true? And really beginning to unpack where you learn to believe X, Y, and Z about yourself. And, we all have these core beliefs. We have beliefs about ourselves. We have beliefs about others. Is that person trustworthy? Can I trust others? Can I rely on others? We have beliefs about life. Is life fair or is life unfair? And the fourth belief, I don't think gets talked about enough, is our belief around money. There's always enough or there's never enough. Scarcity versus abundance. Those are the 4 core beliefs we all possess that are imprinted upon us because of our upbringing, our environment, and our parental relationships. And more often than not, they can be quite limiting in one or all 4 of those categories. But if you're willing to look inward, you're willing to do some of the work to challenge them, confront them, step outside of your comfort zone to experience what it's like without that belief, without that filter, that's where the opportunity is. That's where the magic is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know I have struggled to manage my finances to a degree that I would prefer. So I would like to be more on top of my finances. I'll give a personal example. And for years, I have the identity of that's just not my thing. I just don't really do that. And as a result, my finances are not exactly where I'd like them to be. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. Or maybe it's weight, or maybe it's a business, or maybe it's friendships. It could be anything. And I just go, I just that's just not my thing. And because I'm repeating that over and over. Well, first of all, I want to know why I repeat that. I want to know where did that limiting belief come in? Where probably from childhood, something is there
Mhm.
that's making me think if you get too on top of your finances, something bad happens or something to that effect. So I need to get that out of the way, and then I need to start seeing myself in a different way. Yeah, I'm somebody that can learn how to be more responsible
Yes.
financially. I can start to see myself as somebody who can develop the skills. And by the way, I'm giving myself a hard time here. I actually I want everybody to know I'm doing fine. But I would always like to be doing better.
Yeah.
So that is something that is something I could work on.
Yeah, it's a great example. It's very relatable for many people. I understand that as well. And I think too that, building off of that, one of my clients, Robin, real estate agent, for 3 years in a row, made between 200 or 300 and 400K. Like, made a good living for
Great
herself,
living.
doing really well. One year she shot up to 1.2 million. Like, holy cow, out of nowhere. Yeah, your face says it all. And it's like, okay,
Wow.
like, holy crap, as exciting as that is, the pressure, the expectation. Was it a fluke? Can I do it again? All the responsibility, more attention. Guess where she was the following year? Right back down to that bubble of comfort around 300K. Again, a great place to be, but it's just a good example of how we are programmed for safety, belonging, comfortability, familiarity. Yet all of us here identify as high performers who want to do more and step outside of our comfort zone. But we're literally working against this invisible gravitational force that is our subconscious, which is a master at deploying crafty behaviors and forms of self sabotage, trying to keep us stuck because it is irrational and outdated and thinks whether it's more money, more success, more X, Y, and Z, that is bad, that is unsafe. We cannot actually absolutely do that. It's a threat to your life. And that's what we're up against.
Let's talk about the fear jar. Tell me what the fear jar is and what we can do with it.
Yeah, so the fear jar is an acronym for the core fears we are all biologically programmed with: fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, and fear of rejection. And this is not going to be rocket science or out of left field. We think back to thousands of years ago. If we were judged, rejected, or abandoned by our tribe, well, we either starved to death or we were eaten by that famous saber-toothed tiger that we all hear stories about. So fast forward, thousands of years later, those fears are still very much ingrained. We all have a core human need to belong, to feel accepted, because long ago, if we were isolated, it was a literal threat to our life. So we bring it back now to real estate, and I really like to bring the example of finances in. If you and your peer group, work, friendship, family, if you're in one income bracket and you start having more success and you bump up a bracket or two, yes, wishful thinking is that all of your friends and loved ones will be so happy for you and supportive. But the truth is, it's equally possible there's envy, there's
Yeah.
jealousy, there's anger, there's resentment. And that can potentially create tension and sever ties in your relationships, ruin friendships, family dynamics. So, what do? You dim your light. You play it safe, you play smaller, you tone down the ambition, and you just stay where you're at, even though you go to bed each night with that little voice that tells you you're capable of more. You could live such a better, more abundant life. You try to tune it out. So the fear jar, it's we're all biologically programmed with these fears. It's how do we learn to take action anyway?
So how do we do that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we have to challenge these fears. We have to recognize they are irrational. Our subconscious is like a 5-year-old. It's irrational, it's emotional. And we can't let an irrational, emotional child drive our car, drive the decisions and actions of our life. It never ends well. You probably don't make it past the fire hydrant you've crashed into. So we need to at least understand they're irrational, which again, this awareness, this education starts to create more opportunity. We want to then unpack, where did they come from? When did we learn to be fearful of X, Y, and Z? Because again, even in addition to all having this pre-programmed propension to be fearful of these elements, they're taken to the extreme when they're learned, when they're role modeled for us in early childhood, even in adulthood. So we can really begin to dismantle this fear. There's actually a really cool exercise created by Tim Ferriss, author of the 4 Hour Work Week and 15 other books. But he calls this exercise fear setting. I'm a big fan of it. But essentially, and I'm going to butcher it, go actually Google the real full exercise. But in short, it's writing down the big scary goal It's writing down all the things that scare you about it, the reasons it might fail, and then the reasons your life will be better or different when you succeed. And just one by one, challenging those fears, picking apart, really identifying, like, your so-called worst case scenario. Is it really that bad? Could you never recover? If you do, actually, it's so funny timing. I'm listening to one of Ryan Serhant's books right now, like Big Money Energy. And he tells this story. He's got this crotchety old man as a client trying to sell an apartment in New York for about 7 million. And he's supposed to do it without an open house. Nobody can come visit without having an offer on the table. So Ryan is like, okay, how in the world am I going to sell this apartment? So he convinces the owner that can he make a video to get better listing, get better leads, to get it out there to the other agents. Well, he doesn't tell the owner he actually has this band or this group of friends in a band who need a music video, and they need a space for their music video. So he uses this penthouse suite overlooking Central Park to film their music video at like 1 a.m, and it goes viral. He gets a $7 million offer on the table the next day. The guy is furious. But then his house gets sold, or his place gets sold, and everything's okay. But like, if that happened and he got fired as a client, would his business end? Would his world end? No. Did it kind of maybe feel like that in the moment? Yes. But the point of the fear setting exercise is to start creating distance between you and the fear ahead of time, proactively diffusing the potential emotion and discomfort you'll feel as you start taking action, which accelerates your ability to take action sooner.
This is really important because anything worthwhile, any effort is going to be scary and hard, and we're going to resist it because it's work. We just don't want to do it. And
We're
hey,
lazy.
yeah, it's how we're wired,
Yeah.
and it's just the way it is, and we're all kind of wired that same way. So we want to give ourselves the best possible opportunity to be able to get ourselves to do that work. So this is what we're really talking about is getting some distance from the fear, getting some distance to say, no, I can do that. I deserve that. I choose to do these things that are good for my real estate business. It's a good thing. It's not, yes, picking up the phone and calling somebody might be scary, and it's a good thing to do because it might be your next client. So both of those things can be true at the same time, and we can honor that, and we can tone down the fear as we ramp up the excitement.
And you know what's really scary is feeling the same way or worse tomorrow, 6 months from now, because you didn't take the so-called scary action. And we all reach that point where the pain is so great it becomes easier and less scary to take action. But what if we could be proactive and not have to reach our own unique metaphorical rock bottom, and we could ride the momentum of action, knowing to be true, the more action we take, the less anxiety, the less fear we experience.
And the more freedom we get. It's the term paper the night before. We all do it, or sorry, we don't all do it. I did it. If anyone has done it at least once, we know that experience. And it is not a good experience. It is a fun experience up until the time where you have to do the term paper. And then you say, gosh, if I had only just done it a little bit each day. But we didn't. Why? Well, there's something got in the way. Paul can help you with that. So we think about this as it relates to real estate. Why did I not do my prospecting today? Why did I not call my clients back? What was I afraid of? What was got in the way? Why did I doom scroll on Instagram? What was happening? Not I'm no judgment. Not I'm a failure, I'm worthless, I'm blah, blah, blah. That doesn't help either. I had that in my head rattling around for dozens of years until I realized, oh, that's not a good idea. Because guess what? We're human. We can't do everything perfectly. But when I started to realize that those voices could be replaced and toned down, and that I could actually go somewhere and make a decision and make a choice and do something that was in my best interest for me and for the community and for others, that, oh boy, that would light me up. And yes, it's going to be hard, and I just have to get through the hard part. I have to push myself through the difficulty of it. But the reward is so great. So I love what you do because you set people up to be able to do that hard work. The hard work is comes when the mindset is there. So Paul, let's talk about how you coach clients. So I'm a realtor, I work with you, and what would I expect from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, we just jump on a call. I call it a coaching discovery call. I want to learn as much as I can about, first and foremost, why are you reaching out? Where, how do you feel stuck? What is the opportunity that awaits you when we overcome these frustrations, these pain points, these bottlenecks? We get incredibly clear on how you're getting in your own way, what it's costing you, how it's affecting life beyond real estate. Maybe it's affecting your family. Maybe it's affecting your ability to be present with yourself, your loved ones. So we're getting really clear on painting a picture of what your life looks like 6 months from now if nothing changes, because it just gets potentially or exponentially worse. We're contrasting that with what life would look and feel like when we overcome all of this. And simultaneously, this entire time, for you on the other end, it feels like 1,000 questions because I'm poking and probing, but I'm really trying to answer what I believe is the most important question. Can I confidently help you? And I'm not for everybody, and I also don't just come out of the gate. I can absolutely help you. I want to make sure not only do I fully understand the challenges, I need to also ensure that you are open-minded, coachable, you possess a growth mindset, and you're committed. And I think that's a really key point. Like, it's one thing to be interested in change, interested in growth. It's a whole nother animal to be committed. Just your energy, what you embody is a total different experience. So that commitment needs to be there. And should we feel it's a mutual perfect fit, my coaching package is a package of 10 calls spread out over 6 months or so with nonstop consistency and coaching and accountability in between. And this really allows us to develop at a very expedited pace a deep sense of trust and safety that allows us to go deep, because a lot of the work I do, it's uncomfortable. And I often joke, especially for the men listening, you'll get it. Like, part of the work I do is a lot of emotional work. I just can't call myself an emotional based coach because that would scare everybody away. And I know this as someone who identified as emotionally constipated for the first 30 years of my life. But the point being, we have to be very candid and open about like where you're stuck, why you're stuck, and start digging into your experiences. Most likely a lot of them are in childhood, not all by any stretch of the imagination, and just creating an opportunity environment to start expressing some of that stuck emotion, to start looking at these pivotal moments and memories through a different lens, extracting learning lessons and reshaping or upgrading what it is you've taken from that memory to work for you, rather than to continue to hold you back and drain your precious energy.
So the way I'm visualizing it now is I'm visualizing a garden with rocks, and I'm visualizing you helping me remove those rocks that are in my garden that they might be under the surface, they might be on top, they're there, and they're prohibiting the growth of the garden. They're there. They were put there by someone else, or perhaps I put them there myself, but they're there. They're heavy. They weigh me down. And you're
Yeah.
here to say, hey, it's not your fault that there's rocks in your garden. There's just rocks in your garden. Okay, it is what is. So let's help you get those out of the garden so that new life can spring forth, right? And that's, I think, the essence of what you're talking about is removing obstacles so that before we get to the light, before we get to the victory, we are going to go through a hero's journey. It is going to be arduous. It will be difficult. It will be challenging, because everything in life that's worthwhile is. So that's the good and the bad. The bad is it's going to hurt a little. The good is you're going to come out the other side better, lighter, happier, and more successful. And it's just the way it goes. It's the origin of the Iliad, the Odyssey, all of our the hero's journey, the Lord of the Rings, right? This is all about the hero's journey. We are all on our own hero's journey. We all have obstacles. We all have things that we can, and we need help. That's the other thing too. Every professional athlete has a coach, so you probably need one too. If the
And
top,
this too.
yeah,
Yeah. I love, as I say, like, they don't wait to win their respective championship before hiring a mindset coach either. They do it early on, which enables them and gives them more opportunities to win said championship. A lot of people make that mistake. Oh, when I make this amount of money or have this success, then I'll hire a coach. No, no, no. You have it backwards.
Yeah, I knew there was a realtor at our firm who had a son who was one of the top players as a teenager in the country. He had a coach from the age of like 8 on, and
Yeah.
that coach, and now he's in the NBA. So it's, yeah, you're absolutely right. You need a coach. We all need coaches because we can't all do everything ourselves. We just can't.
Yeah.
Athletes can't do it. Business people can't do it. You know, we're not supermen. It's just not possible. So if you want to remove the rocks from your garden and start to figure out what is holding you back, because you know what to do, you're not always doing it, and we can always improve. Even if you only improved, let's say 10%. Let's say if all you got out of working with Paul was increase your production 10%, which, by the way, you'll increase much more than that. But even if you just did that, wouldn't that be worthwhile? What if you just became 10% happier, 10% more effective, 10% stronger, right? All of that is pretty doable, pretty achievable, and Paul's going to help you get there. So I want you to visit his website, which is thegolfhypnotherapist.com. Again, thegolfhypnotherapist.com. We will have links to this. And again, whether you're an athlete, whether you're, obviously everyone listening is a realtor. So it's all the same stuff. And athletes get this. And a lot of times business people aren't yet fully on board because they don't realize it's very similar. And, athletes get it. So get yourself a coach. Paul, he knows his stuff. He certainly has the credentials. And boy, what a great session, Paul, today. You amazing. I'm so excited that you were on our show. You are incredible. Couldn't be happier to have had you here. The value you provided our audience is insane. So I thank you on behalf of the audience for coming on. And again, thegolfhypnotherapist.com is where you go to learn about Paul. Hire him as your coach. You need one. And he's going to help you. It's going to all get better. So get somebody like Paul, or just get Paul directly, actually. Get Paul and golfhypnotherapist.com. On behalf of our audience, Paul, thank you so much. On behalf of Paul and myself, we thank the audience. We thank you, the listeners. We appreciate you. You are the reason we do this show. We love you. And please tell another agent about this show. That's how we've grown for the last 7 years. Tell another agent about what we do here. Give it to somebody that's struggling right now. Every realtor I know is basically struggling right now. So fire this out. We appreciate it. Also support our sponsors. And we will see everybody on the next episode. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. What a blast.